Well, hello. Hope you had a good week. I had the good fortune of watching the movie in which Tom Hanks plays Mr. Rogers. It was phenomenal. Now, I had known it had been out a couple years ago, and I just never got around to seeing it. But as we were talking last week about synchronicity, uh, I'd been thinking about that whole sense of synchronicity as a almost like loving guidance from beyond, from that which beats our heart, digests our foods, that which works through DNA, that divine intelligence. And again, it was so in that sense, it was kind of synchronicity for me. I felt that my wife and I were watching, had the television on, and all the icons for the different options, the different cable shows, and it popped up. So I took it as a sign, and we decided to watch it. And I watched a little piece of Mr. Rogers defending public television from losing its funding, and how he dealt with this rather jaded, no nonsense senator who wanted to cut the 20 million. And after he heard Mr. Rogers speak very gently and to the point about what he's trying to do with children, he said, "You have the 20 million." So my friend was telling me he had watched it a few years ago, and he asked his son, who grew up in that time frame, he said, "Dad, what did you think about Mr. Rogers?" I felt like he was speaking directly to me. Now, what this brought for me, among other things, was that when I first started doing child therapy, and I was trained to do play therapy with children, I wondered how, and I'd been trained about family systems, and how that interaction with the family, and if you're not really getting a lot of impact on the family, how does, although where I was at the clinic where I was, social workers would do some work with the family, but I wondered about the effectiveness of 1 hour a week giving a child undivided attention, no matter what they're doing, listening, and really conveying to them that they're important enough to be seen and heard. And I remember one of my first cases with a little Jamaican boy. He was 3.5, and he had almost burned down his apartment building. He was an angry little guy. He's a sturdy little guy. His father was a professional football player who left him and his mother when he was just in his first year. So he had a lot of pent-up anger, and his mother had boyfriends over from time to time, and she would almost utilize him as a little teddy bear to sleep with her. And then when the boyfriend would come over, these different men, she would put him back in his room. And so he was being shifted back and forth, and he had a lot of feelings about this. So I just wondered, how's this going to work? So the rule was basically, you'd say to the child, "We can do anything you want in here as long as we don't break things or hurt each other." Well, that went well. Of course, my first session with him, he took every toy off the shelf, games and stuff, in the middle of at the end of the session, the middle of the playroom was just chutes and ladders and checkers and army men and dump trucks and everything else. So my supervisor said, "No, I put the other rule in, which is we put things back after we're done playing with them." But it really was amazing that undivided attention, that earnestness on my part to really listen and really watch what he's doing and make comments. So, for example, he was taking the handfuls of army men and putting them back of a dump truck, and he was dumping them out, putting them back in and dumping them out. And I would say something like, "I guess it must feel like that to you sometimes. Your mommy has you with her, and then she dumps you in your own room, and she dumps you to the neighbors, and I guess that's how you feel." And then he did it more aggressively, and he stopped. And then at another point, he went over to the light switch and flipped it on and off. And I said something too. "I guess sometimes you feel like now you see people, now you don't. They just come and go in your life." And that was related to the men coming and going, and his mother's kind of chaotic lifestyle. And that she would have him sleep with her like he was a little teddy bear. And then when a boyfriend, and she had different men coming over, she would put him in his own room. And so then he developed, feelings about that. He was angry about that. So he's being dumped here and there. So it really turned out. I saw him for a year, and it really made a difference. I could really see a difference. Of course, the social worker was trying to get the mother to be more stable and so forth. But the idea that Mr. Rogers was giving that undivided attention, or in play therapy, giving that undivided attention, really conveying the meta message, the overarching message, besides the content, you're important enough to listen to. You're important enough to be seen and heard. And so that brings me to the important thing about attention. Now, I've noticed this week, I happened to just catch a couple of talks. One by, I've heard of the book, The Untethered Soul, and I know friends have read it. I haven't read it, but I heard the author, I think it's Michael Singer, I believe his name is, was talking with Tony Robbins in an interview. And he was using the word, he wasn't using the word attention, he used the word consciousness, that we're shift our consciousness, our focus of our consciousness here and there, and our consciousness changes and so forth. And I've heard other people say that too. They use the word consciousness in a way, I think we need to make a distinction, that really we're talking about attention, that we're focusing our attention on things. And attention can be seen as an extension of consciousness. It's something from the mind, okay, as opposed to consciousness, which is like the screen that you're seeing me on. You as consciousness and me as consciousness, we are that ever-present element, that spacious silence in which all objects, whether thoughts, feelings, computers, chairs, tables, clouds, sky, grass, trees, all this is appearing in the space of us as consciousness, or you could call it the space of spirit, which is a traditional word for consciousness or awareness. So I think it's important to make a distinction so that we are like lenses of the lighthouse lamp. Remember the analogy from a while ago that I was given when I asked about why some healers were more effective than other healers and how it all worked. And that interview by LeVar Burton, it was a children's show. I sort of put the prayer out, asked what's it about, and then flipped it on. I thought, well, this can't be right. But then it went on. The lighthouse keeper said to LeVar, the lighthouse lamp is composed of the bulb and the lamp, the lens. So the lamp is composed of the bulb and the lens does all the work. And the lens is the focusing element. So, it moves around and casts the light out to sea to different directions. And that's essentially what we are. We are lenses for the light of that intelligence that is consciousness. And so consciousness is more of a stable, enduring, unchanging element, whereas states of mind change. Happy state of mind, sad state of mind. And so what we used to call altered states of consciousness really would be better and more aptly described as altered states of mind, which again, it's extension of consciousness, but it's a focusing. It's like a light beam as opposed to the light. So in that regard, think about where you place your attention in the course of a day. And try this exercise. Breathing in, to say to yourself silently, the peace of my spirit. As you exhale, say to yourself, it's just a breath away. Breathing in, the peace of my spirit is just a breath away. And so a little exercise you can do is say, today, from time to time, I will consciously withdraw my attention, my focus back from the three major areas of everyone's experience. Today I would draw my attention from the mind, thoughts, feelings as they arise, comments I'm making to myself about what's going on out there. The body, which are sensations, pleasurable and painful, aches and pains. And from the world, which is really in our experience. Again, we're grounding all this in experience. In our experience, the world is what we see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. Perceptions. So, I'm going to withdraw my attention from the mind, the body, and the world and sink back into and relax back into this empty, spacious, clear consciousness, which you and I are. This clear, empty awareness in which space, the elements of space here and there, up and down, side by side, and time, before and after, past, present, and future, all appearing in this stable, enduring place, like the screen in which you're seeing me, which will later have other things on it, other shows or sites that you visit and so forth. That's all changing, and that's all what our attention is being pulled into. So you can get this relaxation of the spirit of consciousness, relaxing back, as if stepping back out of the stream endlessly, like the Tibetan log meditation. Your thoughts are like logs and your feelings are like logs. You want to grab the good ones and you want to push away the ones you don't want. And this is what you do. You just come back to the riverbank and let it all pass by and be like the sky in which the clouds are passing by, or like the depths of the ocean in which the waves are changing. The waves are part of you, but the waves roll onto shore and disappear, and you remain. So you can learn to take and withdraw that attention back to that space. Now, in terms of attention, too, I want to mention there's another Rogers, and it was Carl Rogers. And Carl Rogers was considered the dean of American psychology. And he did a lot of really early research on client-centered therapy. And what he talked about was the giving that attention, paying attention, like I talked about within the play therapy, that by giving attention, you're giving the message, you're important enough to be seen and heard. That's what that play therapy was doing. You're important enough to be seen and heard. Once a week for an hour, still very powerful. Or the time, however long the shows were for Mr. Rogers, that child feeling he's being spoken to directly and valued. I like you just the way you are. And so Rogers found that empathy, truly the person feeling that you understand them, that you see and really hear them, and genuineness on the part of the therapist, that you really mean it, that you're not just making it up or going through the motions, that there's a genuineness in you, and that there's an unconditional positive regard, an unconditional interest in you, care about you no matter what you've said and done. More or less like unconditional love. That you are respected and regarded no matter what. And so that's what we need to be attending to in our lives. Watching where we're placing our attention, watching where our consciousness is being focused by our attention. And every once in a while, taking that time to withdraw your attention from these objects. Everything is an object, and you're the eternal subject as consciousness. The screen is the eternal subject, if you will, of all the different topics and things you watch as you navigate the internet. So, quite a gift to give to someone is to really pay attention, and to think of attention as something separate from consciousness and awareness, that light that you and I are. So, as A Course in Miracles has a quote I've mentioned before. It's on the cover of my book. If my shadow's in the lead, it means my back is to the light. And it was a synchronicity, again, like a loving guidance that I got one day when I was walking down the sidewalk toward the Brandywine River, and I noticed my shadow was in the lead and it was moving, and if I ran, it ran ahead of me, and if I slowed down, it slowed down. But that meant that if I could see my shadow, it meant my back was to the light. And that as I turned around and attended to the light, which is what this taking a breath, breathing in, the peace of my spirit is just a breath away. Well, as I turned around, there was a light. So bringing our attention back to that. Now, we can't see who we are. We can't see the light. We can only be the light. We can only be that subject. Just like the screen can't see itself, but the screen sees, presumably, if it's a conscious screen, if you will, seeing this. So the screen of consciousness. But the actual screen is unaffected, not bothered, or can't be disturbed by an image of a waterfall on your computer, a fire blazing, explosion taking place, a bomb going off. All that comes and goes. But you and I, as consciousness or awareness, stay. So like that lighthouse lamp, that's the bulb, the light of consciousness. The lens is the attention, is the mind being focused. So take a breather once in a while during the day and try that. So today I will draw my attention from time to time from the three areas of experience: the mind, thoughts and feelings, the body, sensations, pleasurable and painful, and the world, sights, sounds, tastes, touches, whatever I see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. All these are grabbing attention. And today, one of the big problems with our youth, it reminds me of the difference between radio generation versus TV generation versus, now the computer and all this social media. That children are like looking outside themselves for something to stimulate them, rather than being able to do, say, the radio generation had the advantage over the TV generation because they had to hear things, and then they produced whole scenarios from the imagination got to be activated. And that's where a little bit changed with television with that. But still, there was more going outside and playing, getting off the computer, and coming up with games and inventing things, and even being alone, walking in nature and so forth. That kind of thing. But now it's like advertising. Everything is grabbing attention. So let's practice withdrawing our attention from the mind and learning to disidentify from that endless stream, that total activity, the rapids, and stepping back to the stable bank, or looking up at the blue sky and seeing the clouds pass through and realize we're the sky, not the clouds. And that where we place our attention really matters. So if you're going to focus on what you'd love to have happen, you're going to have better reactions and better results than if you focus on what you don't want to have happen. You only use what you don't want as a springboard. So it's like when something happens you don't like, you remember, my anger tells me only that I don't like this and I'd rather it be something else. Is there anything I can do about it? If I can, do it. If I can't, then we need to accept it. Same thing. All your negative emotions are really telling you something, like the poster shows you. Anger, fear, sadness, depression, all that only arises because of our judgments, our mind making decisions about what we like and don't like. So return to the paradise of your true nature and relax your attention back here. And again, remember I mentioned how the parable of Adam and Eve about how they lose paradise is they eat of the apple, which is the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, good, bad, right, wrong. And instead of, and they become aware that of their nakedness, and they become upset about that, to clothe themselves. All that is a great symbol of we lose the paradise, the peace of our consciousness, the love, peace, and joy of just being identified with our consciousness and experiencing that when we're judging. And only, as the Course in Miracles says, only our condemnation injures us. So you think about it, you're condemning the driver in front, he's drawn too slowly, and the commentator in your head, the mind, the voice, the sports commentator calling the game of your life. That is what we want to be able to step back from. And again, as Eckhart Tolle has beautifully put it, the single most important step on your vital step on your path to enlightenment is to disidentify from the mind. Take a breather. Breathing in the peace of my spirit, my consciousness, my awareness, just a breath away as I would draw my attention from all these inner and outer objects. So give it a shot this week and have a great week, and particularly pay attention to the synchronicities in your life. Take care.